Here's the scenario. You've been injured in a serious accident. The doctor says your recovery could take months, maybe even years, yet your insurance company is denying your claim every step of the way. If something like this happens to you, call me, Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. We have offices in Toronto, London, Peterborough, and now Kitchener-Waterloo. Visit goldfingerlaw.com and get us working for you.
Get Goldfinger today.
Welcome to the Raptors Weekly Podcast, also known as the Game 4 pregame podcast. The Raptors are up in the series 2-1 after a big win in Miami in Game 3, and now they're going to try to take a commanding 3-1 series lead on Monday night. But they got some bad news, and that bad news is, Will?
Jonas is out for the series with a not a high ankle sprain, we don't know that specifically, but an ankle sprain. He's out for the series.
Yeah, the news came out today. It was first like celebration because Hassan Whiteside went down in the game. So we're all like, okay, because if Hassan Whiteside is out, the domination that JV has administered on the Heat with Whiteside in there, you kind of project that out to without Whiteside in there. You're like, this series just might be over before it even got started. And then the whole neutralizer thing happened where JV is now out, and the Raptors actually aren't classifying him as day-to-day like the Heat are with Whiteside. It's just he's out for the series. And that basically, it's weird they did that because right now, like the Raptors are kind of thinking, will Whiteside play? Will Whiteside not play? And even Dwayne Casey, when he was asked today, he goes, well, we got to prepare for both scenarios. Whereas the Raptors will kind of just say, yeah, JV's out.
Yeah. And it's weird too, because it looked like Whiteside's injury was more severe than Jonas's at first glance, because we saw Whiteside, he injured his knee in Game 1. He slipped on a spot and then his knee buckled underneath him. And that looked really bad, but he came back for games 2 and 3, and then he hurt his knee again, and then he said it was a different knee pain, and he was ruled out almost immediately. It looked pretty bad. A lot of the reports come out, suggest that he is, done for the series, at least initially, and then, he gets diagnosed with an MCL sprain, which is, it depends on what grade it is. We're not doctors, but there's apparently 3 grades of MCL sprains, and we're seeing, even if it's grade 1, which is the least severe, that's like what Steph Curry has right now. He's missed 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he's not an impending free agent like Hassan Whiteside is. But, if Whiteside is healthy, then this is a bigger problem. And obviously, everyone wants everyone to be healthy. And no one, injuries are a necessary part of the game, but it sucks. But, after Whiteside went out, Jonas dominated. Jonas dominated anyway when Whiteside was in. And then started the third, Jonas, on a very, very innocuous, harmless play, twists his right ankle. And now he's done for the series.
And he was essentially the best Raptor throughout the Indiana series and so far in the Miami series, which hurt even more. And you could even say that he's bailed the Raptors out multiple times this postseason. And without him, we probably wouldn't even be in the second round. So to see him go down playing his best basketball really hurts. And he was the one guy that was completely not phased at all by the postseason. I think he got stronger in the postseason, whereas the other guys got a little bit weaker. So JV, man, he's been getting a lot of props across from the U.S. media as well. I think his teammates are talking more about him. They're talking about feeding him more. This was really the best time of JV's career, I want to say. And it's just unfortunate that he went down. And Dwayne Casey actually was asked whether this was the best that he's ever seen Jonas, or was this the best? Was Jonas the best player so far across the 2 series? And this is what he had to say.
It's hard to say who's the best. Everyone contributed in their own way. Even though Kyle didn't score, I thought he contributed in wins in both playoff series, Steve. So it's hard to say who's best. I do know that Jonas was getting better every game at doing something, whether playing with confidence, screening properly, defending his position, doing a better job in the pick and roll defensive schemes. He was growing, and it's unfortunate, but because I thought last night was going to be one of his best performances.
Obviously, he's definitely disappointed by this one.
Yeah, no, and we should all be, because, like you said, man, this is the best stretch Jonas has looked basically in his career. I mean, for me personally, it changed my outlook on Jonas in the long term because, even coming into the season, I was a little bit skeptical as to what role he could play with the Raptors long term because of sort of where the league is going. And I saw every time I watched Jonas play, it was always about the limitations, and that really ruined my experience of Jonas. But basically, since he recovered from the second-hand injury in the regular season, he's really slimmed down. He's become faster. He's become smarter on defense. And in the postseason, he's just become the steadiest guy for the Raptors. And that's so weird to say about Jonas because even as recently as earlier this season, he would get pulled so often for making defensive mistakes. And, you remember how Jonas was tentative. He would ask for the ball, and if he didn't get it, then he's sort of out of the play. And no, I mean, in the playoffs, he's been their best player. Yeah. He's been their most consistent best player. And I mean, we saw in the first half of Game 3, it was very clear that he was going to be prioritized on offense, which again is very obvious to a lot of people, but first really among for important Raptors games that Jonas got the ball so much.
Yeah,
and he scored like 18 points on 7-9 shooting, and had like 12 rebounds in like 20 minutes.
Yeah,
he was just destroying everybody.
The one thing happened while he was dominating the Heat in that first half. He was 7 for 12, 16 points, 12 rebounds in 22 minutes. And at some point, Josh McRoberts, your man, Will, blocked his shot. I don't know, I didn't even notice it, but the fact that he blocked one of JV's shots. And our friend Doug Smith, he tweeted this. He goes, McRoberts blocks JV at the rim kind of easily. Perhaps the quote-unquote constantly feed JV crowd might take notice. He's okay. He's got room to grow. Is that the weirdest criticism of a player you have ever seen?
He picked a bad time. Dougie did. He picked a bad time to critique Jonas because that was one of Jonas's best games. And to focus on one miss and one block, where McRoberts kind of made an amazing play where he was out of bounds, somehow like hopped inbounds first and then jumped up. Look, it was a nice block. Congratulations to him. But like Jonas was literally dominating, and how quick are we to forget that Jonas was the reason why the Raptors managed to win Game 2 because of the tip-ins and the post-ups and the pick and roll, that little pick and pop jumper that he hit in overtime, and the defense he played on Whiteside. He got 3 steals in like the last 7 minutes of the game. It was, I mean, this is not the best time to.
It's just
Jonas has been amazing.
Yeah. So in the absence of JV and assuming Whiteside as well, like there's like how do you see this series going? Obviously, so there's two schools of thought, I guess, in my head at least. It's that. Okay, at this point, both teams will replace their big man with another similar big man. For the Raptors, it might be Biyombo, Bebe, or Scola, as we saw in that Game 3, we'll talk about that, I guess, in a bit. And the Heat kind of go with Josh McRoberts, Haslam, or Stoudemire. Or they just go, you know what, screw it. We're playing 5 wings out there for real, and we're playing 5-on-5. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think Miami's going to do, first of all, in the absence of Whiteside?
Well, I think they're going to try some 5-out lineups, especially since the Heat have really struggled on offense in the series. So, they're probably going to try that just to spark their offense at some point. But I expect their primary look to still be the same with 1 big and 4 wings. So, chances are pretty good that Udonis Haslam starts. He's sort of been their most steady guy. Josh McRoberts has probably the most upside, and Amari Stoudemire is the best offensive option. But we're going to see a lot of 5-out lineups and the Raptors should be prepared for that.
Yeah, so I think when they do go out to those 5-out lineups, I think you're going to have to see guys like James Johnson have to play because the Raptors just don't have enough wings. Just by sheer numbers, James Johnson, you would think would get some playing time if the Heat go really small and don't even have like Haslam out there, and they go with someone like Gerald Green or Winslow or Darrell Wright, who hasn't even played in the series so far. So it's going to be interesting. And in talking to Dwayne Casey at practice today, this question was posed to him: where what do you think of this going small? Where does it hurt you the most? And he had some interesting comments regarding where he thinks a small ball lineup hurts the Raptors the most. I'll play for you.
Rim protection, I think, is the main thing. It helps us switching. It helps us in a lot of other areas where we can guard different positions with all 5 guys. But as far as rim protection, it presents an issue for us. We worked on some things today to help us from that standpoint if we do play small.
Rim protection. I mean, that's an odd one. I thought. I didn't think that's where he would go. I would he said something like rebounding or something like that, but not rim protection because JV is not. He's an okay rim protector, but that's not the first thing that jumps at you when you see missing JV. That's
true, but I think it's a credit to JV as well because I thought his defensive play has actually been quite solid. It's definitely in the Indiana series and also in this one against Miami. He's had a couple nice stops. Just what basically he's been working on the last 2 years was just verticality around the rim without fouling while still challenging the shot. And I thought he did a pretty good job against Dwayne Wade and Goran Dragic and stuff like that. But, I mean, yeah, look, Miami is not really a team that attacks the rim anyway that much. So rim protection, you're not really going to get a drop-off, especially since Bismack Biyombo is probably going to start game 4 in place of Jonas.
Yeah. And from a Raptors perspective, offensively, I think they lose the most steady offensive card they had in JV, and this sort of kind of puts even more pressure on guys like Lowry and DeRozan. I know Lowry had a breakout game in Game 3, but DeRozan now, his offense becomes even more magnified because you have your third best offensive player, arguably, is not playing anymore. So it's that much more important that you get efficient offense out of DeRozan.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, especially if Whiteside is also out, and definitely if the Heat go to a 5-out lineup, it's going to be very imperative for the Raptors guards to attack the basket. And DeMar DeRozan is a guy who led the league in drives, total drives, over the regular season, but he's been oddly tentative in the playoffs so far. At least in the first round, you can understand because he went to the rim and got blocked a ton, and he was getting hounded by Paul George. But there is no Paul George guarding him right now, and there's not even a Jan Mahimni or a Miles Turner waiting at the basket to block his shot. If they go to a Udonis Haslem, if they go to Josh McRoberts, or if they just go to Luol Deng or whichever wing is at center. So he has to attack the basket, and I think that was one of the most disappointing things we saw from Game 3 is just that, look, Whiteside was out for most of that game. And the Heat did go small at times, and DeMar DeRozan just took one single shot in the restricted area as compared to something like 15 jump shots in the mid-range area, and he only hit 5 of his mid-range jumpers. Yeah, that's a horrendous ratio.
It's not good, and it's funny you said that because in his practice talk today he was talking about not settling for jumpers, how having JV in there gives them a better offense, so you have to settle for less jumpers. He actually used that word, settling for jumpers, and I was like, man, is there any self-awareness here on what you're saying, because you are number one culprit when it comes to this. But let's talk about the big men here, man. Now obviously Biyombo is a guy we're going to go to. He's probably going to start. But other than that, I mean, I don't think he can play 38 minutes here. But guys like Bebe come into the mix here, and Scola, obviously. Before we get to Bebe, in the last podcast that I hosted, at least with Sam, and he suggested that we should bring Scola back, and Andrew or me and Sham were like, dude, that's a horrible idea. And apparently Dwayne Casey listened to Sam, and he got in Scola in that third quarter, and it was one of the worst stretches of basketball we've seen all year.
Yeah, the lesson here is to not listen to Sam. But about anything, especially basketball, though. Yeah, don't play Scola. Scola at this point is like an assistant coach. It was funny because, not funny, but after Jonas got injured, he was sort of helped to the bench, and then eventually made his way to the tunnel where he was sort of testing his ankle, and they're trying to retape it and stuff. And it was Luis Scola that left the bench to go see if Jonas is okay. And that's like a very nice thing to do. And of course, it's a great thing to do. But it was almost like Luis Scola he didn't expect to play at all. So he was like, I know I can leave the game and just go see how Jonas is doing. It's not like I'm an active player and I'm a big that I might be called upon to replace Jonas at some point. Yeah. And then, lo and behold, he actually did have to replace Jonas at some point, and he played some backup starting 5 against the Heat's bench, and it was quite possibly the worst 5 minutes I've seen of anybody. It was like what Dwayne Wade did in the third quarter, but to his own team in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I think Dwayne Casey stuck with that lineup for way too long.
Just horrible.
He stuck with that lineup for about 5 minutes too long, and I think in that stretch the Raptors were like a -10 or -12 even. They gave up a big lead, and it was just horrible. So I think Scola might be unplayable unless like he's guarding someone like I don't need like which one.
Nobody. He can't guard anybody.
McRoberts, Haslam, or Stoudemire. One of those three he should be able to guard. Like if the Heats extend one of those guys. No, nothing.
He can't guard any of them. And he's not good on the rebounds. He's not good on offense right now. He had like the Heat just left him wide open. He's supposed to be hitting these threes and he missed both of them pretty badly. And I don't want to fault him either because obviously he's been cold. He hasn't played basically since game 3 or 4 of the Indiana series. But yeah, he's not really an option at this point. And I don't think he has to be an option. I think Dwayne Casey found his option when he went to Patrick Patterson at center to close out game 3.
Yeah. So there's also a forgotten man, Jason Thompson, who hasn't been getting any playing time. Is this series a little conducive to him? Because he's a mobile big man who you could argue is more athletic than Stoudemire, Haslam, and McRoberts altogether. And this might be an agile guy that the Heat might have some trouble with. And he doesn't spread the floor is the problem, but neither does Bebe or Scola really. So I don't see what you have to lose here. I think the trade-off that Dwayne Casey is thinking about making is with Bebe. He doesn't have the bulk, so he might get pushed around there, and he has been getting pushed around when he does play. But he's an excellent passing big man. So if you run into some offensive troubles and you throw it to Bebe, he tends to make some really nice passes, even when playing in the NBA, not just the D League. Whereas Jason Thompson really doesn't have much of an offensive gain at all, and he's basically somebody who can just finish around the rim, and that's about it. So the trade-off that Dwayne Casey has to make is slight.
Yeah, it's slight. I don't know. I think Blake put it best in his article today about the Jonas injury announcement that if you are looking for backup minutes from Jason Thompson, it's sort of like a half measure because he gives you a little bit of something on offense and a little bit of something on defense. But realistically, all the defensive scenarios in which you want to play Jason Thompson, you probably just rather have Bismack out there, and all the offensive possessions that you would want. Scenarios that you would want Jason Thompson in, you'd rather have Patrick Patterson or maybe even James Johnson. So I don't know. I mean, he's a fine option. He kind of covers both sides of it okay and well, and he's a decent replacement for Bismack if that's how they want to line up their centers starting and bench. And I think Bebe, by the way, it's fun to think about Bebe playing a playoff game, but then at the same time, we're in the playoffs. We're not going to play this basically what's essentially a rookie big. So, I mean, I think Patrick Patterson, the backup center, is probably the best option. And then to supplement some of those front court minutes that you need at power forward, I think you might. I mean, this is crazy because last week we were just dissing him, but like James Johnson, who I believe you said was, had the last time you saw James Johnson, he had looked like he was completely, unaware of what basketball was, and it's been so long since he's played. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think as crazy as that sounds, I think James Johnson actually could give him some minutes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the Heat do. I think if they go with Udonis Haslem or somebody, I think you kind of have to put a vet on him because when he did come in Game 3, he gave them a good lift. I think he caused JB a couple of issues. He was a guy, basically their 8th or 9th guy off the bench who didn't even expect to play. He's 35 years old, but he came in and he contributed, and he's got that veteran savvy. I know we talk about veteran savvy, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it did come into play in Game 3 where he, boxed JV out. He played physical with him. I think if you have Haslem out there, he could be enough of a pest that he might overpower, I want to say, someone like James Johnson on the boards, and you don't want to have that. The last thing you want to do is whoever the replacement guy is for JV gets a plus on rebounding. That's what you want to avoid, in my view. So I think I would always prefer to go with a bigger guy, like Jason Thompson, whoever the Heat are guarding, because I want to play even on the board. If they go small, like if they decide to give Gerald Green a try and they go with a 5-out lineup, I think then you have to go with James Johnson, and then guys like Jason Thompson are untenable. So I'm more looking at it from a rebounding perspective, where you don't want to get overpowered by whatever change the Heat make. But I think the backup center for either of these teams it's not great. And that you don't expect the backup center to ever have a big game offensively. I think where they can influence it the most is in these intangibles and obviously rebounding. So I think rebounding is my number one concern, that you don't want to give that up.
No, that's a good point. But ultimately, I don't think the Heat can put out a lineup there that's really going to hurt them that much on rebounding. I think their best rebounder now is Udonis Haslem, and I don't want to sell Udonis Haslem short. He's a pretty good rebounder even for his advanced age. But if you make him contend against Bismack Biyombo, he's not getting rebounds. It doesn't really matter who else you put at power forward. Bismack's going to be able to secure rebounds, and that's the case. And I think it's actually quite important for the Raptors. The Raptors' backup bigs are much better than Miami's backup bigs, especially since they're down Whiteside and Bosch. So it's important for the Raptors to, maybe be a little bit more liberal in allowing their centers to pursue offensive rebounds and stuff, because I think that could actually really help. I mean, you think about it, if the Heat go 4 out, maybe even 5 out, then in order for Bismack Biyombo to be an effective player on offense, he's going to be able to, his biggest contribution will be to go hunt for offensive rebounds against these 6'8" dudes, which he can definitely do. So, there's options, a lot of options.
Why do you think Bismack has struggled in the series? Why has he not been a factor? Because I think the Heat are a team that he should be getting minutes again and he should be performing against, because they're not overly big, or it just seems to fit his style.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Heat don't really attack the basket that much, right? Most of the time, if they go pick and roll, they don't really pass it out to their big, and it's mostly their ball handler shooting. And James Johnson and Dwayne Wade, they like to work off the high screen and then turn it into a pick and roll, turn it into a post up scenario or an ISO scenario in the mid range area. And there's just, I don't know, there's not a lot of need for Bismack. But now, without Jonas in there, I think Bismack can really influence the game, not necessarily with his rim protection, which is obviously his biggest trade, but with rebounding.
Yeah. So just a couple of comments from Bismack. Actually, he was asked today whether he can play against in a small ball lineup where he's asked to do things that are not necessarily his forte. And this is what he had to say.
I mean, I've shown that I can guard small. We switch a lot when I'm on the floor, 1 to 5. So it's nothing surprising to me. But as a team, we have to find a way to keep them under 100 points. I think that has been the key for us to win the playoff game.
Yeah, so that's Bismack. I think he's pretty confident. I like the way he speaks.
I love his accent.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, he always takes the reporters very seriously. He looks at always eye contact. Even in the post-game interview, if you talk to him, he's fully focused on the reporter, whereas anybody else is just looking around the crowd and kind of giving them 50% of their attention. Anyway, so Biyombo obviously is going to be a key factor, and he feels comfortable playing small. I think he should be fine. I think he's just going through a rough patch, and I think the Heat, whatever lineup the Heat throw out there, he should at least, if not have the rim protection impact, he should at least have a rebounding impact.
Yeah, for sure. And, if he's not making that sort of necessary impact in terms of getting offensive rebounds and the Raptors offense really stalls, which, happens a lot when Bismack's out there. Obviously, now that there's whoever is playing center guarding him just leaves and plays free safety on everyone else. So, if that's the case, then you have an option in Patrick Patterson, who I thought was excellent playing center against the Heat's sort of small ball type lineups down the stretch in game 3. Yeah. And I think that you can continue going to that. Obviously, Patrick Patterson keeps a defender honest by being able to shoot. He's also a pretty good screener. He passes the ball really well. We know that. And I think defensively, he's just as mobile as Bismack Biyombo. And if the Heat go very small, then I think the Raptors can also... I think that there's no rebounding disadvantage there because, Patterson is not a good rebounder, but if he's the tallest guy out there, I think he'll be fine.
Yep. The one guy that's been killing us over 2 games but did struggle in third is how do you say his last name? Goran Dragic, yeah. Okay, I was told to correct it because I kept calling him Dragic. So Goran Dragic, it was 5 for 14 for 12 points. He struggled shooting, did have a bit of an impact, but not nearly the one that he had in games 1 and 2. Dwayne Casey was asked in practice today that twice now the Heat have been able to get critical late threes to tie the game. Because somebody has been overhelping. Or once they actually got the 3 to tie, the other time the guy missed. But both times, I think it was DeMario Carroll who overhelped on the ball, and it left somebody wide open. And we obviously escaped in game 3, but got hurt in game 2. So this is what Casey had to say about guys overhelping on the ball. Yeah, we dodged a bullet there at the end of Game 3. And one of the reasons that's happening is because Dragic is getting a lot of penetration. He does force the Heat to kind of move the ball around. And the Raptors' defensive nature by default is a little aggressive. And they end up overhelping on the ball. And if you kick the ball around, you will find an open man against the Raptors' defense. So Dwayne Casey definitely guarding against that heading into Game 4.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope the Raptors make this necessary adjustment, especially if the Heat sort of play more perimeter-oriented. But this has sort of been a problem that's affected the Raptors' defense all season. Yep. They do overhelp a ton, and they do leave open shooters a lot, and that's why they conceded the second highest opponent three-point shooting percentage in the regular season. And, you know, the Raptors, they dodged a couple bullets because, like, you know, as Dwayne Casey was talking about there's that key possession where Joe Johnson had a chance to tie the game wide open with like under a minute left because DeMar Carroll helped all the way in the paint against a drive. That was silly. That's just silly defense, and you have to communicate better if you're going to switch. And, you know, if the Heat do go 5 out, you're probably going to have to switch a lot of things. So communication is going to be very important in those scenarios so everyone knows who their assignment is. And hopefully, you know, the Raptors can continue to keep the Heat under wraps from three-point range because the Heat shot it well in Game 1. They didn't shoot it so well in Game 2. And Game 3, they definitely didn't shoot it well, except for Dwayne Wade, who randomly is now like a credible three-point shooter. You know, the Raptors have been very good because, you know, the Heat have taken a lot of mid-range jump shots. And even though that's something that's of a forte for them, it's hard to sustain an offense just based off mid-range jumpers. And, you know, the Raptors, as long as they can, you know, clean up a couple of spots, I think their defense has actually been really good against the Heat.
Yeah. What are you more scared of? The 5-out lineup the Heat might play, or if they go with with someone like Haslam in the middle? Like, what do you think is a bigger threat for the Raptors?
I think just the 5-out lineup might catch the Raptors by surprise, and I think that they might not know necessarily what to do and how to execute their schemes against such a weird lineup. But at the same time, you know, there's one thing for the Heat to go 5 out. It's another thing for like the Warriors to go 5 out. And I think we're all envisioning like, oh my God, there's going to be wings everywhere. It's going to be very difficult to defend. And it very might could be. But if you look at it, the Heat have really old players, especially on the wings. And if you play small, then you have to be more active on defense. You have to really double and crash and send a lot of help and rotate. That takes a lot of energy. So it's one thing to ask, like, you know, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes to run some kind of scheme like that. But it's another thing when you have like 34-year-old Dwayne Wade, 35-year-old Joe Johnson, 31-year-old Luol Deng,
and not to mention
rotate all the time,
and two rookies in Winslow and Richardson who have not had great series. Even defensively, I don't think Winslow has bothered DeRozan. I think DeRozan's struggles have been like his own doing. I don't think Winslow's doing anything spectacular in defending DeRozan. So if you go small ball with, you know, some of those guys like Richardson and Winslow, I think you got to favor the Raptors no matter who's on the court. I think it's a great point because what scares me about them going 5 out is what I just meant. The clip I just played is that the Raptors being stretched on the floor and overhelping, and their 3-point shooting getting hot. If that's not happening, I think the Raptors will be okay no matter what lineup they play out there. Because let's face it, overall, you know, yeah, they got Dwayne Wade and Joe Johnson, but overall, I do think the Raptors are the more talented team.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially, look, I mean, the Heat have been besieged by injuries. It's crazy. They lost Chris Bosh, and now they've probably lost Hassan Whiteside for the series. I mean, we don't know for sure, but maybe. And if you really look at their offense, so far it's just been Goran Dragic, would you say, is their best player offensively?
Yeah, I think, well, Dwayne Wade, I think you can make a case there too.
Okay, so it's one of the two of them, right? And, you know, they both had their moments so far in the series, but, like, who else has played well for them? Joe Johnson shooting like 35%. Luol Deng has been a non-factor. Whatever they're playing at center, it's not working, and their bench has given them nothing. So, you know, the Raptors, it's the reason the Raptors won 10 more games than the Heat in the regular season for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you take out Dwayne Wade's heroics out of the series and the Raptors are up 3-0.
That's crazy, right? Yeah. I mean, seriously, remember the 2 and 1s plays that DeRozan had down the stretch of Game 1? He missed the and 1 free throw both times. And if you just hit one of those things, and let's say somehow Lowry still hits that miraculous shot, the Raptors could be up 3-0, man.
All right, so speaking of DeRozan, man, again, so I'm going back to practice, which happened at the Miami Arena today. DeRozan was asked on missing JV, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, but, the things JV was doing, it was big, man. He was playing his best basketball in a period of time when we definitely need him. It's definitely going to be hard to duplicate that, but like you said, we got great teammates on this team that understand their roles, and they're going to do whatever is needed for us to win.
Yeah, and then follow up, he was asked, about rim protection on, you're going to get Bismack Biyombo in there, and this is what he said.
We kind of was playing small ball as it is the last 3 games, besides, Whiteside and, JV. So, both teams really got to adjust now. Their rim protector not out there. We got a lot of great guys who can attack the basket. And I think we still have a great rim protector with Bismack. So we still have that element, in our package. So, I think, we just got to take advantage of that, with them not having that rim protector out there, but knowing we still have ours.
Yeah, I haven't included in this audio clip, but he does talk about the fact that, taking like too many jumpers, too many outside jumpers has been a problem. And I think without Whiteside in there, the rim protection that he mentioned not being there, I expect at least to see a much more aggressive DeMar DeRozan who takes a lot of shots around the rim, certainly more than he has been so far in this series.
Yeah, I would hope so. But even in Game 3, when Whiteside wasn't there for the second half, I think that was a lot of the frustration. I was turning on DeRozan. I was handling the our account, so the account we were turning on DeRozan. And again, a lot of it is just settling for bad shots, and DeRozan has done a ton of that so far in the playoffs. But he should be able to attack. But at the same time, losing Jonas actually kind of hurts his offense a little bit, because now it's Bismack screening for him, and now, both players are going to be sagging way back into the paint and waiting for DeRozan. But, it's not like DeRozan hasn't seen this kind of defense before. It's not like the Heat has some sort of superhuman defender out there, like in the last series. Again, there's Paul George, but there's none of that. So DeRozan should be able to get to the basket. That's what he's great at. It's his elite skill in the NBA is to go to the basket, draw contact, and finish. And you could really see that Whiteside was getting into both DeRozan and Lowry's heads, because they were talking about, it's difficult. They're big. You got to find the right angles to get layups up and stuff. It's very difficult. You saw DeRozan shoot all these running push floater things. He shot 6 or 7 of them in the last couple of games. Yeah. You just cut all that out. Yeah. There's nobody back there. You're not getting blocked by Udonis Haslem. Udonis Haslem can't jump anymore. DeRozan, man, this is your time to step up.
Yeah, and I think just take a page out of Dwayne Wade's book. You talk about restricted area shots. He had 1 in Game 3, whereas Dwayne Wade had 7. That's a huge difference between the two. I think that kind of shows the different styles of basketball the two guys are playing right now. So, and I'm confident that DeRozan actually will have a better game. I think he'll get to the line. If he gets to the line 10 times, man, we're gonna win this game. 5 foul contacts near the rim, I think we'll be okay here. And I fully expect him to have a solid game here, because I think just let's listen to him in practice today, seeing some of the quotes coming out. I think he recognizes the fact that not having Hassan Whiteside in there is going to be a big thing right from the start of the game. And I'm really hoping that this is going to be his sort of coming out party like it was Kyle's a couple of games ago. But man, go ahead.
I was going to say, after Whiteside left, some of the other Raptors, were driving to the basket and attacking the hoop. We saw DeMar Carroll go in there with a weird little leaning layups. I feel like DeMar Carroll's layups are always super weird. His drives, he just leans his way to the basket because he's not quick anymore. Yeah.
He leans with his shoulder too, which is I almost feel like a call for an offensive foul.
Yeah, he probably should be eventually. But anyway, we saw DeMar Carroll. We saw Corey Joseph go in there a couple times, for his little twisty layups, and we saw Kyle Lowry go in there 2-3 times. So all that wasn't happening with Whiteside. That was the invisible effect of Whiteside's rim protection. It's just that the Raptors were literally afraid to even attempt shots, and it seems like the other Raptors have figured it out, and it's up to the Raptors' best driver in DeRozan to follow suit. And I think if he does that, the Heat are going to be in big trouble if he's able to consistently penetrate, because especially if they go 5 out, they will have no rim protection, and they will have nobody who's experienced to play in a center type role defensively. Despite them all being veterans, it's not like you have natural experience being the backline of defense. I think DeRozan could really feast if he just stays aggressive and basically says, I'm only ever going to shoot my jump shot as a last resort, which, hasn't been the case in many of these games, because it's very clear that DeRozan's just trying to get to his spot and launch his mid-range jumper when that should be his last resort.
Yeah. Let's switch to the other side of the game for a second. Defensively, I think Corey Joseph hasn't been talked about enough generally in this series, because I think he has been one of our better perimeter defenders for anybody he's guarding. I think he's forced Dwayne Wade into tough situations. He's applying ball pressure on Dragic really well. Generally speaking, I think he's been an underrated defender in this entire series, and offensively he's doing okay as well. He had that huge drive in the fourth quarter of Game 3, which was just massive. And talk about Joseph overall, because he hasn't been getting a lot of headlines at all.
No, and Joseph's not a flashy player. He just comes out the bench. He's just very, very steady, and I think that steadiness kind of gets overlooked because, in terms of a guy who comes off the bench, the luxury the Raptors had with their bench units was just that because of guys like Bismack Biyombo, who's all energy, Corey Joseph, who's a lot of energy and some skill, and Patrick Patterson, who's a lot of energy again. You're able to get very consistent production off the bench, and all you have to do is look at Terrence Ross to see what a normal bench player looks like, with how much inconsistency there is. And with Corey Joseph, he's sort of the head of the snake there, man. He's able to play with the starting units, obviously. And in terms of in the playoffs so far, he's been quite steady. His jump shot has been really, really good. And we saw Corey Joseph when he was sort of overburdened and overworked for the middle of the regular season. His jump shot kind of died on him. And that really killed the bench offense. But now that's back, and we've seen him catch and shoot. We've seen him sort of pull up off the high screen. He's looked confident in his jump shot. And if his jump shot is falling, man, he's a very, very good player because he's able to consistently finish around the hoop, both hands, creative. He's been amazing defensively. He just refuses to be screened. I think that's the one thing that Corey Joseph, his elite skill on defense is just, it's so hard to screen this guy. And, we've seen him guard guys like even Joe Johnson. Remember in game 2, Joe Johnson was really working his little post-ups, and he was scoring on DeMario Carroll. And in overtime, it was actually Corey Joseph playing with 5 fouls that actually guarded Joe Johnson 2-3 possessions, and Joe Johnson ended up missing his last 8 shots. So it was team defense, but Corey Joseph is great defensively, and he really doesn't get noticed a lot because he's pretty soft-spoken and his game isn't flashy, but he's been absolutely vital to the Raptors.
Yeah, and he's shooting 56% in the postseason. 56%.
That's incredible.
That's huge. And they're all within the scope of the offense, nothing forced, and tends to come up with big clutch baskets. In the season, he shot 49, and in the postseason, it's 59% actually for the quarter. Anyway, no, 56% for the playoffs. And also, here's another thing. 50% from 3 in the postseason. That's huge, man. This is after going 31% in the regular season. So he's shooting, as you said, has stepped up. And defensively, the fact that you don't notice him probably means that he's playing pretty okay defense, because anytime somebody blows a defensive cover, you tend to get noticed fairly quickly. But a guy you mentioned there, man, Terrence Ross. We're not going to talk about the 2 turnovers that basically passes to the other team.
Just so bad, so infuriating.
But don't you feel
that's Terrence Ross in a nutshell there?
But don't you feel that his regular season has been perfectly projected onto the postseason, where he's had flashes of brilliance and flashes of just being terrible, and everything just sort of makes sense in this universe of Terrence Ross?
That's exactly that, man. Terrence Ross is a lot of flashes of brilliance and then a lot of just very, very dumb, boneheaded plays and disappears. Look, Terrence Ross has been a pretty good player, actually, so far in the 3 games in the second round. Even surprisingly, in Miami, he's had a couple... Even Terrence Ross had a couple driving layups and stuff. A driving dump-off to Bismack that he mishandled out of bounds. But one of those blown bunnies. We got to restart that super controversial counter. Look, Ross he's a very useful player. And I think what gets lost in those 2 turnovers, because of how infuriating they were, is just that Ross was the guy that forced Ross was the guy that got the defensive stop before those 2 turnovers. Yeah. And he's actually been quite effective on defense. And that sort of bench scoring that he can bring just because he's such a naturally talented shooter and such a gifted athlete, that's actually very useful for the Raptors, especially, if the main options on offense for the bench unit are taken away, because, a lot of the times Bismack with Corey Joseph in that high pick and roll, that doesn't work because neither of them can shoot well. But
by the way, the U.S. announcers love Terrence Ross. They love his game. Like ESPN absolutely loves it. Yeah, John Barry, Tim Legler, they think he's amazing. Albeit inconsistent, but they do love the guy. And he has, in game 2, was it where he had a couple of crossovers and kind of had a little slight fade for the jumper, which looked really good.
He was hitting clutch shots in game 2.
Yeah. Would you be surprised if he goes 18 points on 4 for 5 threes in the next game? Or if he goes, 0 for 6 with 4 turnovers again. It's so, there's absolutely nothing. You have no idea what to expect from this guy. And that's what makes it so beautiful, man.
That's Terrence Ross, baby. That's the Terrence Ross experience. Just very high peaks and very low valleys.
Yeah. Well, let's get to predictions, man, before we wrap this podcast up a little. So game 4 is on Monday night. So prediction time, man. Will, how do you see this one playing out?
I think, so the general scope of game 4, I think it's going to be a lot of in-game adjustments by both coaches, because both coaches are now going in with uncertain rosters, and they don't necessarily know what other teams are going to play, and it's going to be a lot of adapting. So because of how much adapting there's going to be, I'm a little bit concerned about Dwayne Casey and whether he will be able to push the right buttons. I think Dwayne Casey's going to come out with a great pregame plan. He's a very good between-game manager, as we've talked about many times on this podcast. And because of how much uncertainty there is, there's going to be a lot of need to scrap things and go with things on the fly. And I think in that scenario, I think that favors the Heat. So I'm saying the Heat win, but it'll be interesting. I mean, who knows? The Raptors look like the better team, and they are the better team right now.
Yeah, it's pivotal. Game 4, whenever the series is 2-1, obviously it goes 3-1, and the series is basically over, or it's just a brand new series of the best of 3. So, you know what? I feel that. Yes, not having JV hurts the Raptors because he has been a big source of offense. But I do think that not having Whiteside in there helps our 2 best players more. So I think, as you said, if DeRozan kind of takes on the mentality that there's no shot blocker in there, I don't think... he averaged 30 points against the Heat during the regular season. And there's no reason for me to believe why he shouldn't be able to do that without Whiteside in there, because if he drives, I don't think the Heat have the defenders that can stop him, especially if there's a loose whistle out there. I think Kyle Lowry being back is hopefully he's being back. Is a big X factor. I think that cancels out basically whatever Dwayne Wade is doing. And I do think the Raptors are kind of poised for a full big team game. They haven't had one in this series yet. They haven't had one in game. I want to say game 3 in Indiana. That was the last time they actually blew somebody out and played really well. So I think they're kind of due for it. I'm going to call the Raptors win on the road here, man, because I do think they're poised, and I think DeRozan will carry us through. He can't possibly continue with this sort of shooting. There's got to be, the light has to shine at some point. So I'm going to go with the Raptor win, man. I hear you on the Dwayne Casey in-game adjustments. He's been poor at that throughout his Raptors tenure, but I don't think there's that many adjustments to make here. I think you either go with a 5-out lineup or you go out with a one big lineup. And I think either way, whatever the Heat throw at us, I think we have the personnel to handle it, unless we just, botch it somehow. So I'm confident in a Raptors win.
Yeah, that'd be great. It would be great to go up 3-1, man. Seriously, we're lost in all of this is that the Raptors are 2 games away of going to the conference finals, which, by the way, it's been determined we're going to face Cleveland. That was a mere formality. They swept the Hawks.
I think it was determined after game 1 that we were going to face Cleveland.
Man, it doesn't matter who wins the series if the Heat make a comeback. If the Raptors win, they're getting swept by the Cavaliers.
You think so?
Yes. Man? The Cavaliers, they hit something like 83. They set a record for most threes hit in a series, and they did it in 4 games.
Well, wait till Norman Powell shuts down J.R. Smith.
Nobody can shut down J.R. Smith unless you block the shot. The more contested his shot is, actually, the more accurate it is. Feels like.
Is Bruno on the playoff roster?
Yeah.
No worries then. No worries.
We got to bust out Bruno.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, who's going to come back to life first, Jon Snow or JV?
I don't watch Game of Thrones, man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
I like to wait until the series is over and then go back and watch the whole thing on my own terms.
All right. So we'll end the podcast on that. So, listener, thank you for tuning in to a Raptors Weekly edition, which is also a pregame for or a preview for Game 4. The Raptors hopefully will win the game and go up 3-1 and look to close out Game 6. Hey, we didn't talk about Dwayne Wade and the whole national anthem thing. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I mean, look, ultimately, I think it's kind of silly and weird that in American sports, North American sports, we play national anthems before games within like a private league, and it's just strange to me. Why are you playing the American anthem if it's just two American teams? What's the celebration of America there? But putting that aside, if you're going to put on the anthem, it's just a show of respect to stand there in solidarity and sort of respect it. And it's not a cool move for Dwayne Wade to shoot. It doesn't bother me that much. I just think that he has to be smarter about that. And he especially has to be smarter about the non-apology he offered, because what are you doing? I don't understand. This is I saw it invoked a lot of rage online, and I'm not screaming at Dwayne Wade. I don't think he's actively trying to disrespect Canada or anything like that. That's silly, but at the same time, that is kind of disrespectful by Dwayne Wade. Just respect the anthem. That's it.
I don't know if it's conscious or not, but the one point that I can see Wade's point on this one is that before he wanted to join the anthem, he wanted to hit his last shot. And if you've ever gotten ready for a game, you always want to hit the last shot in the warm-ups. You don't want to lead that with a brick. But I get it. It's disrespectful, and I'm not angry about it, but I can see why people might be. I was hoping he'd get suspended or something, but that's not going to happen because
he's not going to get suspended. Yeah, not for this.
Not for this. All right. So we'll leave it at that. So, listener, thank you for tuning in. If you want to support Raptors Republic, go to patreon.com/Raptors Republic and do rate us on iTunes and Stitcher and whatever mobile app you listen to the podcast on. We'll be back tomorrow after Game 4 when the Raptors hopefully will take a 3-1 series lead. Listener, most of all, thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.